We'll call to order the regular city council meeting for Monday, August 3rd, 2015. Oh, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Greer.
Here.
Council members Brown.
Here.
Ekstrom.
Here.
Bates.
Here.
Weed.
Here.
Frida.
Here.
Council members Shiraki and Ketchmark excused. We have a quorum.
Okay, next is approval of the minutes from the July 20th, 2015 regular city council meeting, July 27th special city council meeting, and July 22nd public works committee meeting. Are there any corrections? May I have a motion, please? Councilman Bates.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I make a recommendation. We approve the July 20th, 2015 regular city council meeting, July 27th, 2015 special city council meeting, and July 22nd, 2015 public works committee meeting.
Second.
Second from Councilman Weed. Call the roll.
Councilmember Bates.
Aye.
Councilmember Weed.
Aye.
Councilmember Brown.
Aye.
Councilmember Frida.
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
All right, any council member announcements? Councilman Bates.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we have a general government meeting on Wednesday, August 5th at 4 p.m. right here.
Any others? Okay, let's see. Rochelle Reeder, are you in the audience? Not here this evening. Okay. Well, earlier this week, I signed a proclamation naming the week of August 9th through August 15th as National Health Center Week. And we were requested by Valley-wide Health Service to do that. And so we'll make sure that they get that. And next we'll go to adoption of the agenda and the consent agenda. Kathy, will you review the consent agenda for us, please?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, in lieu of the absence of the city administrator, he's asked me to go over the consent agenda items. Very few of them. The first one is to authorize the mayor's signature on a software subscription agreement with Information Technologies, Inc., it's ITI. Council had recently considered and approved this agreement substantially as drafted at their April 20th meeting. However, since then, changes that substantially altered this agreement have been made. Therefore, it in its new form is being submitted for council's consideration. As with the original agreement submitted in April, this agreement will provide for software training and support for the police department's records management system. Next on the consent agenda is bid 2815. This is for 12 water valve replacements for the water department to Water Technology Group of Denver for $22,116. As the Water and Superintendent Hartzman reported at the 722 Public Works meeting, this is for the purchase of valves for the pumps at the high-end pump station. These valves will replace the original valves that were installed in 1975, of which many of them leaked due to the age and will no longer keep the line drip tight. 2 bids were received from the 3 solicited. This was the only bidder that met the specifications of the bid, and funds are included with the 2015 budget. Also, I believe the list of bills are included, as well as I think Attorney Havens wants to further report on some new development with ITI.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, I just want to underscore the reason we brought back the city ITI contract was that we now have a 1-year term as opposed to a 3-year term. That affects only the cost of software going forward after the first year. All the one-time charges in the first year software will be paid by CRCA, so no expense to the city there. Because we became a 1-year instead of a 3-year contract, there could be slight cost adjustments for software in 2016 and 2017. That seems sufficient enough, significant enough to bring the matter back to your attention. Finally, ITI requested last Friday one very small wording change that doesn't change the substance of the agreement. That'll be in the final contract. It had to do with the invoice date for 2016 and 2017. They didn't want to be locked into having to submit an invoice no sooner than 30 days nor later than 20 days prior to the end of the contract year. So we eliminated the 30-day reference. They must submit invoices no later than 20 days prior to the end of the contract year. In all other respects, it's the same contract that was in your packets.
Thanks, John. Any additions or corrections? I have a motion, please. Councilman Ekstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Second from Councilwoman Frida. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ekstrom,
Aye.
Councilmember Frida, Councilmember Bates,
Aye.
Councilmember Weed,
Aye.
Councilmember Brown.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
We have no administrators report this evening, so we'll go right to item number 6, which is ordinance number 6, series 2015. This is the second reading of an ordinance calling a general election. Clerk, will you read by title, please?
This is a bill for ordinance number 6, series of 2015, an ordinance submitting to the vote of the electors of the City of Canyon City, Colorado at a general election to be held November 3rd, 2015. Ballot questions for candidates for the mayor position and candidates for certain council member positions.
May I have a motion, please? Councilman Weed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I move adoption of ordinance number 6, series of 2015 on second reading.
Second.
Second from Councilwoman Frida. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Weed.
Aye.
Councilmember Frida. Councilmember Brown.
Aye.
Councilmember Bates.
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Item number 7, which is the 1% sales tax increase proposal, has been delayed until Monday, August 17th. We'll move right to item number 8, which is a public hearing for the application for renewal of a 3.2% beer retail license for Walmart, number 1019 at 3105 Highway 50. I'll open the public hearing and request a report from the clerk.
Mayor and members of council, we have 2 representatives from Walmart. We have a co-manager and a front-end supervisor here, as Walmart has applied to this council for renewal of their 3.2 beer retail license. Notice of this public hearing was given by posting the premises. Under council's current policy, routine renewals of liquor licenses are generally done administratively and no public hearing is necessary. However, if there are concerns relative to the licensee, council has directed staff to bring the licensee before them in public hearing. This otherwise routine item has been scheduled for public hearing because they served an underage person during a sting operation that was conducted by the state of Colorado in February of this year. In this case, the licensee paid a fine to the state of Colorado in lieu of suspending sales of their alcoholic beverages. Staff has reviewed this application and sees no reason to not recommend renewal. However, through council may wish to ask the licensee or their representatives what actions have been taken to ensure that there is no repeat violations. As Walmart employees receive training through their hiring process, and Walmart has installed the cash registers that are programmed to prompt them for a date of birth for all sales of alcohol. So therefore, a question exists of what results were found during their investigation of this incident. Upon review of the application, the appropriate forms and fees have been submitted. The applicant maintains possession of the premises. Sales tax reporting is current, and the company remains in good standing with the state of Colorado. So with that, I'd open it up to any questions you may have of the applicant.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Councilwoman Frida?
But I don't have the question.
Uh-oh. Just make something up.
For the record, could we have the representatives of Walmart identify yourselves?
My name is Charlene Cross. I'm a front-end supervisor.
My name's Aaron Smith. I'm the store co-manager.
Good evening. Are you familiar with the Colorado Liquor Code?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a copy of the liquor code on file with your establishment?
Yeah, we
Yes,
have it
ma'am.
in our management office, actually.
How many employees do you have?
Total in the store,
Right.
about 275 right now.
Are your employees trained on the liquor code and liquor law?
Yeah, we actually have a yearly mandated training. First, when you're first hired, you get the same training, but each year we are mandated. It's a compliance through a computer-based learning program where every one of our associates, including myself, every other manager, we all have to take the recertified on the training of.
So
proper-
everybody is automatically
It's-
recertified every year?
Yeah, it drops
Okay.
in the computer-based learning system, and we have to take it every year. If not, we cannot run the register or handle it or anything like that.
Are you fully aware that you are responsible for compliance with the Colorado Liquor Code and that any violations of this code may be held against you and/or your business and result in suspension and/or revocation of your liquor license? I understand you have a particular safeguard built into your system that your computer or your cash register prompts.
Yes, it
Of
asks
what-
for the birth date. It first asks you if the person appears to be under 40 years old. And then if you answer yes or no, and then it prompts you to enter the birth date. So there's no question of their age, because if you enter the birth date, it automatically will tell you.
Okay, so it's not an automatic for every customer, there's a visual there?
It's based on the
Okay.
UPC code of whatever item you're selling. So it'll prompt for cigarettes, it'll prompt for alcohol, it'll prompt for gun sales. So anything that has a age-determined sale, it'll.
But the checker still has discretion of whether to
But
employ
yes,
that or
if they
not?
choose not to follow the prompts, then it becomes on them. It's not because they have not been trained the proper procedure.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Councilman Ekstrom?
Thank you. So then my only question is how did he end up getting caught?
Well, like I said, it was a sting operation. So as soon as the sale was completed, the officer came back in and introduced himself, showed his credentials, let us know, hey, this cashier on this check stand sold to the person he had working for him, or whatever you want to call it, and then that's how it.
Okay.
So-
So the register clearly, or the
Oh,
cashier
absolutely.
clearly made a,
Yes.
poor,
She
a
made
very
the
poor
decision.
judgment.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if it means anything, it's automatic. We end up terminating the person that doesn't follow the prompt. So.
Oh, okay, clerk?
Aaron, you had said 240 employees, but mainly how many employees are the ones handling liquor, stocking, selling? that
Well,
type?
we don't even stock it. It's a vendor process who stocks it. So the only time people that would really truly handle it would be the cashiers at the front. So probably 50, maybe 60 cashiers at any time.
Not 240?
Yeah, no, not every employee would ever be involved with the process. But every employee does get the training, so.
Any further questions from council? Any questions from the audience? All right, I'll close the public hearing, request a motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve this application for renewal of a 3-2 beer retail license for Walmart.
Second.
Weed, any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Frida,
Aye.
Councilmember Weed,
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom,
Aye.
Councilmember Brown,
Aye.
Councilmember Bates.
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Item 9 is public hearing for the application for renewal of a hotel restaurant liquor license from El Alazan Mexican Restaurant, 1925 Fremont Drive. I'll open the public hearing and request a report from the clerk.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this is Candelario and Maria Lopez, the owners of El Alazan Mexican Restaurant, who has applied for renewal of their hotel restaurant liquor license. Notice of the public hearing was given by posting the premises. Once again, under council's current policy, routine renewals of liquor licenses are generally done administratively. However, if there are concerns relative to the licensee, council has directed staff to bring the licensee before council for public hearing. This as well otherwise is a routine item being held in public hearing because they had sold to an underage minor during a sting operations conducted by the state of Colorado here last February. In this case as well, the licensee paid a fine in lieu of suspension of sales. Staff has reviewed this and does not recommend against this licensee. However, council may wish to ask the licensee how they have handled the incident. Upon review of the application, the forms and fees have been submitted. The applicant maintains possession of the premises and sales tax reports are current. So with that, I would open it up to any questions you may have of the applicants.
Are there questions from council? Councilwoman Frida?
Are you familiar with the Colorado Liquor Code?
Yes,
Is there a copy of the liquor code on file at your establishment?
yes,
And how many employees do you have?
or
Are your employees trained on the liquor code and liquor law?
yes.
And how do you do that?
They come to the city training classes. We just get here last week.
Are you fully aware that you are responsible for compliance with the Colorado Liquor Code and that any violations of this code may be held against you and/or your business and result in suspension and/or revocation of your liquor license? What measures have you taken to ensure this won't happen again?
Yes.
What are you doing to prevent this?
To prevent.
Mhm.
I send it to take the classes, the training classes for alcohol, and they learning. I think they learning pretty good because I hope this never happen again. When this happened, when this accident happened, the reason is because, I have him because he's very good worker. He worked very hard, responsible. And one day before the accident happened, his mother passed away. And I told him if he need days off, but he said no because he don't want to stay home thinking. He said if he stay home, he can get sick. So he's learning about this. And
Well, something you need to think about is that the training here is 1 day or 2 in the year. And if you have turnover in your employees and you're relying on the city only, then it's possible that you could have employees that haven't had the training. So you need to have a plan for covering that on an ongoing basis. Do you understand?
I understand, and everybody have the classes, the training.
Well, we don't want to see this happen to you again, hopefully.
I hope never again.
Okay, well, I have no further questions.
Councilman Ekstrom?
Yes, thank you. Have they been before us before, or was it for another reason?
They came before you for a modification of premises for the patio.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know when we talked to state enforcement too, that the circumstances surrounding that she talked about, she's also said she's learned from the incident because she probably should have had him stay home even though he was really adamant about coming to work because he didn't want to grieve at home. He thought he'd be, better around people. She thinks that probably under the circumstances, she probably should have had him stay home instead of work. So there has been some learning experience.
I was confused as the relevance of that.
Just because of the mental state he may have been in at the time. They've learned probably if that should happen again, that they should have made him stay home instead of allowed him to come to work because maybe some of his,
Lack of concentration or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
And then I guess my last question is not necessarily pertains to them, but would it have been in a report if a repeat offender had been in here multiple times?
Yeah, what the liquor code provides for is if you've had more than one in 1 year, it would have been reported.
Thank you.
For anybody ever, seems like once is enough. Have we had?
Couple that's
have
had
we?
more
I
than
remember
once
a
a year,
couple.
yeah.
Oh, did you?
Any other questions from council? Any comments from the audience? All right, I'll close the public hearing, request a motion.
I move to approve this application for renewal of a hotel restaurant liquor license for the El Alazan Mexican Restaurant.
Second?
Second from Councilman Weed. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Councilmember Frida?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
Aye.
Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
Councilmember Bates?
Aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Approved by unanimous vote.
Very well. Item number 10 is resolution number 13, 2015, amendment to the comprehensive plan for the US 50 corridor. Adam, you have a report?
Yes, Mayor and Council. Terry Bernath and I are here
Start
to
the
give
clock.
you a final update on what we believe is the last step in adopting the US 50 corridor plan. We were before the Planning Commission last month on the 20th, and they adopted a resolution to update the comprehensive plan to include this in that plan, and so we hope to do that with you tonight as well. So just, I have a short slideshow to kind of go through. It's some of you that are familiar with the process and that were involved, and maybe a repeat a little bit, but for the benefit of the public and some others, just wanted to kind of recap what we went through and what the project was. So essentially, this was a corridor plan for US 50, or what's otherwise known as Royal Gorge Boulevard through the city, from city limit to city limit, all the way from Soda Point to 4 Mile Parkway. The corridor is about 6.5 miles long. In the process, we split it up into different districts. We had the gateway districts, which were on the east and west ends. We had the downtown district, and we had the East Canyon district as well. We felt that we needed to separate those into different districts for different considerations because of how different each of those areas were for the city along US 50. So we started this process exactly a year ago. Started off with some stakeholder meetings. We had some of you participated in some of those stakeholder meetings. Then we had a series of public meetings. We also met with CDOT a number of times, as well as teleconferences with their staff. More recently, we wrapped it up by presenting it to the State Regional Transportation Commission, and then Planning Commission last month, and finally with you guys here tonight. Just to recap again, what we were trying to do with this project was, in a nutshell, improve the traveling experience through Canyon City along US 50. And in doing that, improving some of the development options and opportunities along the corridor, the aesthetics, the safety. We even talked about drainage a little bit in this process. Ways of stimulating growth along the corridor, controlling some of that growth in a way that is conducive to some of the other things that we have going on in town. So some of those are the goals as we moved along through it. There were a number of big ideas that came through the public meetings. Quickly, I want to talk about one of the big things I think that came out of it that surprised some of us. Well, maybe not surprised us, but I thought it was good that this flushed it out. We didn't expect it to come out through the corridor planning process, but was this idea of expanding downtown from Main Street to the river. Ties in very well to some of the other things that we're working on in the city with the open space and trail plan, some of the stuff, the things that we're doing on the river, some of the development opportunities that we're talking about, and a lot of parallel processes that FEDC is working on, the rec district, and those sorts of things. So that was one of the big ideas that came out of that, talking about the downtown section. And then in the East Canyon section was really redevelopment and development of what open space is left out there, and getting people, again, from the highway into our commercial districts and other amenities in town. So there was a number of development recommendations that flushed out. I'll remind you that this is a conceptual plan for the corridor, so there was not a lot of specifics in this plan. It was recommendations for what we need to look at in the future. And we talked about that at length with the Planning Commission. So, we talked about updating some of our zone districts specific to the corridor, maybe creating some new commercial districts in each of the districts, like the Gateway District, East Canyon, downtown, and so forth, that will be more specific to what's happening in those areas, because right now our commercial district is kind of a one size fits all, and it doesn't really work all the time for some of these sections along the corridor. So we talked about updating those zone districts, talked about maybe doing some landscape standards, again, back to the aesthetics, and signage. We've been talking about that a little bit. I know that Terry's been working with the Planning Commission on starting some of those discussions, and so in the near future, we hope to be having some of these specific discussions with you with using this plan as a guide. Then we had some mobility recommendations that flushed through for the plan. Downtown, existing condition you're familiar with, 5 lanes, narrow sidewalks right adjacent to the travel lanes. Not a perfect traveling experience for vehicles or pedestrians, definitely bicycles. So they came up with 4 different options that flushed through. We have a 5 lanes modified, 4 lanes in some sections we talked about maybe, 4 lanes with a median and 4 lanes offset with a cafe zone. Some of those could even incorporate some parking along US 50 in the downtown section if we felt that was important. And so they created some sections depicting each one of those options in the downtown area. So here's an example of the modified 5 lanes. So what they did there is they narrowed up some of the lanes, hoping to do some traffic calming. But what that does is open up some small amenity zones on each side where you can get some plantings and signage and those sorts of things and separate the pedestrians a little bit from the travel lanes. Here's the example of the 4 lanes. So you get rid of the 2-way left turn lane in some sections of downtown. And all these options we know coming later we'll have to take, we'll have to do some detailed traffic studies with CDOT and do a lot of work with the property owners on either side as well, because it depends on the downtown district is 1st through 15th Street. Those blocks, those 15 blocks, there's very different things happening in each one of those blocks. So that was the thought, that some of these options in the downtown section may work for 1 or 2 blocks or maybe more. Here's what the 4 lanes with a median would look like. So it opens up, again, some amenity zones on the side, plus in the center you can have either a landscape median, location for some wayfinding signage and those sorts of things downtown. And then finally, 4 lanes with a cafe zone. This is what I talk about, where maybe you're shifting the highway south or north, one way or the other, opening up a lot of width between the roadway and the front of the buildings. Again, as we move forward, we'll be talking to those different property owners and developers and what their ideas may be, because this would give this more of that concept of expanding downtown, not just Main Street, but Main Street to the river. And instead of seeing US 50 as a separator, as part of that downtown feel. And so this 4 lanes with the cafe zone kind of does that. And then we go to East Canyon. Out of all the options that were presented there, the biggest one that came out as preferred was the elimination of the frontage road and opening up US 50 into more of a boulevard feel. If you were to eliminate Fremont Drive, they discovered that would allow room for some multimodal trails on either side or one side for pedestrians and bicycles, along with sidewalk, and widen out that amenity zone, which you now have, a concrete ditch and guardrail, could be all landscaped area along with the boulevard median in the center for that. So this is just a depiction of that. And that area that Fremont Drive would be devolved by the state could either become shared access for businesses, could open up opportunity for additional development into those areas. So lots of room out there because the right-of-way is so wide in East Canyon. One of the other things we talked about in that is that it would allow right-in, right-out access only to some of those businesses directly, similar to what it used to be when all the side streets in East Canyon had direct access to the highway. But you still had the frontage road scenario to deal with. Well, without the frontage road, you could have much more of those accesses directly from the north lanes in and out of those businesses. And then hoping in between the signals, you could, because you have that wider median now, with the boulevard feel, you could have some U-turn pockets in between the signals where if you were eastbound and saw a business you wanted to go to on the north side of the highway, it'd be easier and quicker just to make a quick U-turn than a right in. Again, we know this takes a lot of coordination, a lot of work with CDOT developers and current business owners to make this work. But we have examples of where that's worked in other places, and this has people fairly excited in that area. Then we talked a little bit about sign concepts as far as boundary or jurisdictional signs as you enter into the city. We had them do a few mock-ups for us on that as you come into the town, east and west. So again, not a final design, conceptual only at this point in time, but showing you, okay, this is probably the place that makes sense to do this, and this is the kind of thing that we're looking for. And I know that Doug's going to be talking to you guys about priorities next year and some of this, moving some of this forward, and this is one of the things that's on his list, is one of these monument signs in the gateways. And then again with the signage, as you move through the corridor, having a more consistent feel so that people understand that they've arrived at a destination and they have a certain eye for what the city's trying to show them. And so as you move through the city in the different districts, you may have different types of signage, but again, all meeting the same look and vision as what they are expecting to see as they come into town. With the landscaping and the meetings that we're talking about, it opens up different areas for the wayfinding signs. And we're already starting to look at different options in, again, in the signage code, but also in how that works with the state's signage code and how we can open up different opportunities for the private entities to do some signage in the right of way as well. So next steps are implementation after we adopt this. Again, we got to refine what that vision is. If we're starting with our gateway signage, we want to make sure that's right from the get-go, because everything in between there is going to have to flow along with that. We got to look again at the regulatory framework that we talked about with the Planning Commission, signs, development. One of the things that was interesting that came up during the Planning Commission meeting was are you going to involve the developers? You're going to involve the business owners and that sort of stuff. This plan is paramount on that. I mean, that's the whole purpose of this plan. Is to improve our city and improve the economic vitality of it. I mean, that's really where we're going with this. So it's goes without saying that they'll have to be an integral part of it. Everybody that's involved in this will have to be an integral part of this. Some of the key next steps, of course, you guys are going to hopefully adopt it tonight. We are already starting to talk to CDOT about completing what will be necessary traffic studies and environmental studies on some of these elements. Doug wants to start looking at final design and installation of one or two of the boundary signs. We already have some forward momentum on some of these projects. We have the east kiosk wayfinding area that we're looking at there at just east of 4 Mile Lane. We have the design that we're almost ready to submit to CDOT. I know Rex is having a meeting next week to discuss some of the elements of that wayfinding kiosk. If you haven't had an invite to that, I would talk with Rex Brady about that, because that will be happening soon. All part of this plan. We have a grant funded already for the downtown pedestrian study. One of the things that came out of this was that critical need for a crossing downtown for pedestrians. So we're moving forward with an RFP that you'll probably be seeing soon to bring in a designer for that. We have some pedestrian improvements that are already funded in the East Canyon District. And hopefully this next winter, the US 50 Dozier project will go to AD. And even though it was started kind of simultaneously with this process, it's very much has a lot of the concepts of this plan in it. With the closing of the old intersection at Dozier and the new one, it will have some of these right-in, right-out concepts that we're talking about in the East Canyon District. So we're going to be able to see right away how that works for the businesses. So those are the next steps. We're here kind of to answer any last-minute questions you might have. Hopefully you'll consider the resolution that John has drafted for you. And like I said, we're already moving forward. And don't have any other recommendations besides that
Any
tonight.
comments or questions from council? Yes, Mr. Brown.
I've been approached by several citizens questioning the plan, and one of the questions that I hope you could clear up is the design guidelines component. And I won't give you my understanding, but give you an opportunity to speak directly to the design guidelines as to whether they're in the plan currently or not in the plan, and how they would be ultimately developed.
Well, they haven't been developed. This is an overarching plan that makes certain suggestions. At this particular time, there are suggested to be 4 districts, 4 different zoning districts. As Adam alluded to, we have one commercial district that is a catch-all. Doesn't work as well as it could if we were to separate that out and create districts based on their location. Those guidelines, and I'm assuming that that's what these folks are meaning, that those guidelines would be in those particular districts. And we had this discussion with the Planning Commission as well, and Commissioner Gill was concerned that people would have financial obligations to conform to those guidelines. And the way I would put it to you right now, because we haven't started to discuss how those zoning districts are going to look, is that, first of all, and as a zone district might change, all of the existing businesses within that become non-conforming if they have non-conforming components. And it will depend on how, if there are any requirements at some point to adhere to what the zone district requires. But up until that time, my understanding would be that it's non-conforming, and as long as nothing changes, you wouldn't have to make any changes to your particular property. Now, that's not to say that we don't want people to become part of that district and have their property start to look like the district. I mean, the whole point is to bring businesses along and make them more successful and have an aesthetically pleasing corridor. So as we had talked about with the Planning Commission, there will be probably incentives, as we've actually discussed before, with respect to signs and very possibly landscaping, and that those particular, and there may be incentives to change something in your property or on your property. That certainly, none of that has been decided yet as to whether that's going to be the case. Adam also mentioned a comprehensive sign plan where carrying these signs throughout the districts, identifying them, similar to our political boundary signs, where businesses can share signage and be closer to the highway. So there are all sorts of ways that the design guidelines, if however those come about, can be incorporated. And over time, I mean, this is a long-term process. It's 20 to 30 years built out. So none of this is going to happen quickly.
Thank you.
What this plan does is identifies right up front that design guidelines were needed. That was what the public, in the public process, that was one of the top things that came out. And so it identifies that and then reiterates that it's necessary. That's all this plan does as far as design guidelines.
So the citizens and property owners still have an opportunity to influence the design guidelines as it would be laid out in each of these districts.
Absolutely, yes.
That was the point that I hoped to draw
It would be
out.
required, yeah. It would be required. As Terry said, just the funding of a lot of these concepts in this plan, it's going to take everybody working on it. Everybody that's affected. So it's not even something the city could even conceptually pay for and make people do. It just can't happen that way.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments or questions from the council? Any comments from the audience? May I have a motion, please? Councilman Bates?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I make a recommendation, we approve resolution number 13, 2015, amendment to comprehensive plan for US 50 quarter plan.
Second.
Councilman Weed, any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Bates?
Aye.
Councilmember Weed?
I hope I live long enough to see this come to fruition. And aye.
Councilmember Ekstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Brown?
Aye.
Councilmember Frida? Approved by unanimous vote.
Finally, we have the citizens' request to speak to city council. We have one, is that correct? Okay.
One written request to speak to council from Christina Klipfel from 1365 Forest Lane. She wants to speak to council about a rooster.
Well, I've been really wanting to get another rooster, 'cause, I haven't had one here, but I mean, I'd like to have a chance to get one again, 'cause this is my permanent house, and, I know they allow 7 chickens where I live, but I'd be willing just to have 1 chicken and 1 rooster, or 2 chickens and 1 rooster, and, but I know there's dogs that bark out there a lot too, and, I thought maybe that might be an exception, and there are a couple places that they had a rooster real close to town, and I thought, I'm close to town too, so I thought maybe that might work.
John, roosters are currently banned by our chicken ordinance, right?
Sitting here, that's what I recall. We went through the chicken ordinance, and I think roosters, as the legislation is written today, are banned.
Actually, roosters over 6 months older are prohibited.
Okay, well, baby roosters are.
Baby
allowed.
roosters you can have.
Who's in charge of determining age? Okay, all right. So you're requesting that the rule, we take another look at the ordinance regarding roosters?
Like, roosters for any age.
Okay. All right. So, no louder than a barking, no bigger than a barking dog,
Well, I
maybe.
don't want a loud rooster, just a rooster.
Yeah. You know what I think we should do is probably put this on a future general government committee meeting to reconsider.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Christina, I have your phone number of record 276-1124. Okay, we'll call you and let you know what meeting that's going to go to.
Thank you. Being no other business, we'll call this meeting adjourned.